They're ready.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa to everybody. No mai haere mai. We won't be starting with our karakia because that was done in the early part this morning for our day. So our day has opened. But I want to welcome you all to our committee, and I'm going to ask Maya if she could do a roll call, please. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Bartley. Councillor Casey.
Kia ora, Maira.
Kia ora. Deputy Mayor Cashmore. Councillor Collins. Councillor Coombe. Councillor Cooper.
Aye.
Councillor Dalton. Councillor Darby.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
Present.
Mayor Goff. Councillor Hills.
Kia ora.
Councillor Henderson. And that shouldn't be Member Honig. It should be Member Kaki, and he is an apology. Councillor Mulholland. Councillor Newman.
Kia ora, Maya.
Kia ora. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Maya.
Kia ora. Councillor Simpson.
I'm here, Maya.
Kia ora. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Present.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
IMSB Member Wilcox. I can see you. And Councillor Young.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And just to let you know, Councillor Henderson is on the meeting, and Councillor Bartley. So I can see them, so they're on. And I'll keep an eye on the chat bar. Councillor Collins, I can see as well. Sorry, Councillor Henderson, about the cup of tea.
I'm just getting over that last meeting.
Yeah, so, okay, look, we'll get into our agenda. And like I said, welcome to you all. The apologies, we've already mentioned the apologies. I'm going to move that, Councillor.
Sorry,
Newman.
Mr. Chair, I've already
sorry.
given my apologies for early departure as well.
Yeah.
On council business, thank you.
Yeah, got that noted.
As well
Any
as myself.
further?
As well as myself, Chair. I mean, Councillor
Aye.
Cooper.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Ka pai. And then we also had an apology from Councillor Dalton as she on council business. So can we note that, please? Are there any further for Maya to put into our recommendation? No? Okay then. Look, I'll move. Councillor Newman will second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. I'll then move to declarations of interest. There's none. There's no petitions. There's no public input. There's no local board input. There's no extraordinary items. I'm going to move to the first item on our agenda, and that is the Regional Parks Land Classification Program. This, I know there's a little and a short presentation from our staff, and if I get Matt to introduce who was on the, Matthew, sorry, to introduce the team, and then we'll move into the PowerPoint. And I asked Councillor Fletcher, are you okay? I left the message, but are you okay to move this and I can second this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that will be fine.
Thank you so much. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'll put it on the table. So Matthew, can you introduce the team and then move into the PowerPoint, please? Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you to the Chair and councillors. Yes, it has been a very long day for you all. I'd just like to introduce who else is on the call today. With us from my team, we have Tristan Lagoon, and we also have Joe Mackay, who will be presenting the report after this on the Regional Parks Management Plan draft. We also have Scott Silver, Manager Regional Parks, Taryn Crew, General Manager Community Facilities, Mace Ward, General Manager Park Sport and Recreation. No, I'm just looking through my list. I'm sure I've missed some people. Here we go. And we've got some others who are also supporting this call today. Also welcoming Justine Haves, our General Manager for our department. So we'll just we'll go straight to the presentation. And if you could just move to the next slide. So the purpose of the report today is to seek decisions from the committee on the classification program. And there's three parts to that. Firstly, there is Local Government Act land that we wish to declare to be reserve and to classify under the Reserves Act. The second recommendation is around classifying some regional parkland that is already held as reserve under the Reserves Act that needs to be classified according to its primary purpose. And the third part is approving public notification of proposals to reclassify reserves so that they better align with their primary purpose, or in the case of a few reserves, to correct some previous errors in their classification. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we might be asking is, why is land classification necessary? And I know I've been through this before, so I won't dwell on this too long. So it's a mandatory requirement under the Reserves Act for all reserve land to be classified. And that is because when regional parks management plans, like other reserve management plans, are developed, the policies for the regional park that are held under the Reserves Act must align with the classification. It also enables some statutory processes such as leasing and licensing to be undertaken, and it also streamlines those processes as well. So where we put that proposal through a management plan process, it can then avoid the need to then subsequently publicly notify it if it's contemplated clearly in the plan. And the last point is just around the fact that we do have a significant number of reserve land parcels within the regional park network that are unclassified, and we need to deal with those. So next slide, thank you. So there's two main ways that regional parkland is held and protected. So firstly, we have the majority of our land, probably around about 75% of it, is held in fee simple under the Local Government Act, and has that extra layer of protection of being protected in perpetuity by Order in Council. The second way that we hold land within the Regional Parks Network is under the Reserves Act, as I mentioned, and this is where it is also classified under that Act as well. And some of that land also is protected in perpetuity by Order in Council, where we hold it in fee simple. There is other land that has got underlying Crown ownership, where that Order in Council cannot apply. Next slide, please. So at our last workshop with the committee, the question was just raised about the differences in the way we manage land, whether it's held under the Local Government Act or the Reserves Act. And this slide here is just to show you at a high level just some of the differences between the two acts. So in a nutshell, the Local Government Act does provide us with greater flexibility in terms of the range of activities that can occur on regional parks, whereas the Reserves Act does prescribe the type of activities and what can occur where in a much more constrained fashion, depending upon what the classification of the reserve is. On the other hand, the Reserves Act does allow, as I said, for leases and licenses to not require further consultation if they're allowed with a certain amount of specificity within the plan. Whereas under the Local Government Act, leases that are longer than 6 months generally do require public consultation. The third point is that because the Reserves Act has some quite specific provisions in it, there's greater clarity about what the land is held for. So it's hardwired into the legislation. Whereas the Local Government Act has that general competence principle underlying it, which means that there's a greater reliance on other mechanisms such as the plan to achieve that consistent and integrated management. In terms of the matters that need to be considered when we're making decisions in the future about activities that can have on the Reserves Act, there's some mandatory stuff that needs to be considered in the Reserves Act, whereas under the Local Government Act, decision making is much more enabled and it's based upon the level of direction that's provided within the plan. In terms of enforcement powers, the Reserves Act has some additional enforcement powers that we can use, and in addition to other legislation is available to us, such as the Resource Management Act and the Biosecurity Act. Whereas under the Local Government Act, there's much more reliance upon enforcement powers through our bylaws, such as the Public Safety and Nuisance Bylaw and other legislation as well. And the last point is that the statutory requirements for regional parkland with, I guess, high natural and cultural values does really sit under other legislation rather than sitting within the Local Government Act itself, by and large, save for, of course, the bylaws. And whereas under the Reserves Act, there is much stronger protection for regional parkland with high natural and cultural values. And for this reason, mana whenua generally support, to a greater degree, land being held under the Reserves Act, particularly given the strong connection to Te Tiriti within that legislation. Next slide, please. So I just want to run through some things that have happened since the PACE Committee workshop on the 15th of September. So since that time, we've finished engagement with mana whenua, and you'll see in the Māori Impact section of the report what has been discussed and some of the views that have been expressed by different mana whenua entity. So one of the key changes we've made is in Muriwai Regional Park, where some proposals for land to the south of the main beach area, we have decided to do reclassification rather than retaining them under the Reserves Act. So what we heard from Te Karawamaki and also supported by Namanga Whakahi o Kaipara is that they would really like the land at Otakameru Point and Mokatia Special Management Zone and the Mitchelson Block to be reclassified from Recreation Reserve to Scenic Reserve to recognise those high natural values in that area. And following some further discussion internally, we've incorporated that proposal into the reclassification proposals that you'll find in Attachment D. Some of the proposals for classification of reserve land in the Hunua Ranges Regional Park have also changed following consultation with Watercare. And this is around the Lower Mangatawhiri Special Management Zone, which is under licence to Watercare, and which they retain the right within their licence during the term, which is a 100-year term, to develop a dam and reservoir within the zone if they need to in some time in the future. So what we've decided, as with other reserve areas covered by their licence, we are going to propose this land be classified as local purpose water conservation reserve. So originally we were looking at potentially scenic reserves classification, but because Watercare is wanting to retain rather than relinquish that right to develop that area, we're lining that classification up with other areas within the water catchment. The fourth point is that Mutakaroa Hamlins Hill Regional Park, subject to the decisions that are going to be made by the committee shortly on the Regional Parks Management Plan, we've removed that from the scope of the land classification program to line with the recommendations about the draft plan. And the last point is that we have also undertaken informal consultation with elected members in the 5 affected local board areas. And I can provide you with a bit of an update about what we heard from one of the local boards, that's Franklin. So we didn't receive any feedback from 4 local boards, but we did receive feedback from Franklin about the proposal to classify reserve land within the Hunua Ranges Regional Park to local purpose water conservation reserve. So the feedback we received was that there was some concern about potential unintended consequences about developing the regional park for recreational purposes, including commercial activities, because of the constraints that potentially classifying that land as local purpose water conservation reserve might reinforce. And I guess they want to make sure that we're not inadvertently excluding use of that land in the longer term by doing this classification. And I think the two key areas that really concerned about is the area that I've just discussed before, which is the Lower Mangatawhiri area, but also the forestry area in the northwest of the park, which are two key areas in the draft plan where recreation does occur within the regional park. So the Lower Mangatawhiri area is already constrained and has, as I mentioned, a right to develop a dam and the reservoir in the future. So there are already constraints within the licence document in terms of how we can develop that land for recreation. But I must say that we have good ongoing discussions with Watercare and our wider directorate staff just about the types of activities that can occur within that area. And so we feel that, we've got a pretty good understanding about what we can do that doesn't feed that future right. And in terms of the forestry area, based upon the analysis we've done, most of that forestry area is in fact held under the Local Government Act, so won't be affected by the decisions that are going to be made today in terms of classifying that land under the Reserves Act, where it is already held as reserve, as local purpose water conservation reserve. Next slide, please. So following decisions today about the classification proposals in the report, we will make sure that any further changes that are made today as a result of decisions are correctly recorded in the draft plan. We'll be publicly notifying reclassification proposals from the 10th of December, so that'll coincide with the draft plan if that is approved for notification today, and that'll run through to the 10th of February, just recognising that close down period. And then in March, we will present a report to the committee on any objections to the reclassification proposals and seek final decisions upon those. And we'll arrange for all classification decisions, both those ones that are non-notified, so that's the ones that are in the first two recommendations, as well as these ones that are going through a notification process. We'll arrange for those to be gazetted through the community facilities team. And subsequent to that, we will update the plan if that's required following those final decisions in March, and we'll also make any changes to Council's database as well. Thank you, Chair. It's time for Pātai for you.
Yeah, no, kapai. Thank you, Matthew. And I think the relevant is the last bullet point, which is coming back to us in March. So that's the relevant point. Look, if we got any Pātai, because I know that all of us have gone on Nexus and looked at not only this particular cover PowerPoint, but also with the recommendations. So, Councillor Walker, a question. No comments, just a question, please.
Sure. So I've got a question around the limited options around the consideration of revegetation, particularly planting trees to meet our climate change requirements. The reason I'm asking this question is that the land on regional parks is arguably the best land available for planting trees as compared to investing money in street trees. And at the same time, it would reduce emissions faster than anything else through the retirement of livestock, which is by far and away the most rapid response we can make to reducing emissions than almost anything else. So my question is around what information is going to be available for an assessment of those options to people wanting to make submissions, given that we're in a climate emergency. And a further question around the necessity, I would suggest, to revisit some of these matters in the near term, because it's highly likely that the climate emergency will escalate in the near term. So if I could have an answer to that, Mr. Chair, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep, no problems. I'll get that answer at the next item, where the relevance is there. This is around classification. It's not about what you've just asked the partai on. And
My
as
apologies.
Mace put in, let me finish,
Okay.
please. Let me finish, please. So what's happened, Councillor Walker, is that in the next item, that will be put to the team once we've gone through. So I move to Matua Glen.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman. Yes, look, my query's around a couple of items that are in the list for reclassification, but I'd actually like to have a background corridor. Is that possible rather than bring it out here? Because it's just too specific. Is that possible, Matthew?
Yeah, look, anything's possible, Matt. It's just to have a corridor with Matua Glen.
Absolutely.
Even post this, Matthew, sorry. If you can confirm that, that'll be great.
Absolutely fine to have a background chat about that.
Yes, thank you.
Kapai, because again, it comes back to us in March of next year around the reclassification or final reclassification. So if there's no more partais, it has been moved and seconded. Are there any whakaaro before I put it?
Haere tonu.
Aye, 3-second rule. So look, there's none. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Against? Carried. Kia ora. We'll move into the next item. The next item, I just wanted to point out that, again, with this particular item, I'm going to move it and Councillor Casey will second this. Now, there are some changes to our committee that are online now. There are some changes in there, but the changes that you will see in red are those, one, to ensure that a member of the Independent Māori Statutory Board is part of the delegation to approve minor amendments. That is in E for Echo. The other one is F for Foxtrot, again, just to allow a member of the Independent Māori Statutory Board to be there to approve amendments to the draft plan arising from the land classification report presented. And in G, that particular one, I have put that there based on Councillor Cooper and Councillor Fletcher and an Independent Māori Statutory Board member to be chosen to go on to the hearings panel. That recommendation is there because when it went to the workshop, Councillor Cooper was the only one that indicated that she would want to be on there. Councillor Fletcher, as the portfolio holder, is obviously the other choice. Councillor Cooper, in regards to her experience under the Regulatory Committee. We also will have 2 independent commissioners part of the Hearings Committee. I have spoken to our manager that looks after the hearings team, Julie McKee, and I will be keeping it at 5. That's because of the issues that she outlined to me, and that is around having alignment with all the diaries and calendars, and she doesn't want to take people away. Having 5 at least, there is an ability for a decision to be made without having the casting vote. So I'm going to move straight to the PowerPoint presentation. And Joe, again, if you could let us know the team with the PowerPoint, knowing that everybody has read it online, and if we could go through there. Thank you so much, Joe. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present the draft Regional Parks Management Plan today. The team, Matt introduced the team earlier in this meeting. It's the same team. Matt, Tristine Nguyen, Scott De Silva, who's Manager Regional Parks. I believe we have Kim O'Neill as well on board, Head of Property and Commercial Business, including the Farm Business Unit, and 3 General Managers, Justine, Mace, and Taryn. So thank you. If we could move to the first, thank you very much, Maya. So today we're seeking approval to notify the draft plan. That's the primary objective and purpose of this this kaupapa. In doing that, we are seeking approval firstly to exclude Mutukaroa, Hamlin's Hill Regional Park. I'll get on to the reasons why a little later. And also the Hunua Falls Special Management Zone from the draft plan. And we're seeking approval for final changes to the draft to be delegated. And as you heard, it's to the Chair, Deputy Chair, and to an IMSB member. Next slide, please, Maya. I'd just like to remind you of the process to date. So last August 2020, this committee notified its intention to prepare a new plan. And then following that, we had 2 months of receiving submissions, suggestions for the draft plan from communities and from organisations. We summarised those suggestions and provided a summary to elected members around this time just before Christmas last year. This year, we've really been focused on developing that plan. We had written to mana whenua in 2020, and throughout this year we've had inputs from mana whenua, talking to 16 of 19 mana whenua entities in the region, as well as to the Mana Whenua Kaitiaki Forum. We've also been working extensively across the council group with many different teams across council, as something like the regional parks touches so many different parts of what council does. And so there's been a lot of input across everybody. Back in March, we received feedback from local boards on the basis of them looking at the summary of suggestions and workshopping that with us from late January. And then with this committee itself, we've had 3 workshops, one in May and 2 in September, and that leads us to today. Next slide, please, Maya. So just a reminder of what we covered in those workshops. In late May, we provided you with an overview of the community input and also from comments that we'd received at that point from the Mana Whenua Kaitiaki Forum. And then we also presented some analysis which led us to present 6 key areas of focus, which we received favourable feedback on, and we've used to infuse and to lead our work on the plan. At that time, we indicated the direction of travel that we were thinking of taking for both responding to many comments we've received around the track closures and the Waitakares, and also around the many and varied views around farming. And then in mid-September, that workshop focused primarily on the actions, policies, and approach that we were proposing to take to embed climate mitigation into the draft plan. And we canvassed the potential options for both reducing emissions from visitor vehicles and also from pastoral management. And we also covered the earlier item on this agenda, land.
Hi, Wayne here.
And
yeah, I'm good, Kieran, I'm good.
Hey, Wayne, we can hear you talking. Turn your mic off.
Thank you. In late September, we presented input from Mana Whenua, which we'd just concluded at that point, and we provided you with an overview of the content of the draft plan. So next slide, please, Maya. So the plan, in a nutshell, responds to those key drivers: climate change, growth, the continuing growth in the region, Mana Whenua aspirations, and the wide range of community and local board suggestions that we received. The plan is aspirational. It describes different ways that we can achieve the vision and the values to protect these amazing places. It also emphasises the role, an extended role for Mana Whenua over this next decade. It also clearly indicates, given that it's aspirational, that the intentions are not all funded, and it signals our intent, which is aligned with the approach to the LTP, to partner with others to help deliver the aspirations in this plan. It also identifies some key priorities at this point in the plan. One of them being to do a track network plan for the Waitakere Ranges and also for the Whenua Ranges to make sure that we can identify recreational options in those areas as a priority, and also to look at Te Arai, which is an area which we think will have a lot more visitors coming through in the near future. Other intentions we intend to prioritise once the plan is developed, and that's how we're undertaking that. It's a similar structure. This plan has a similar structure to the 2010 plan, and that there's two books. There's a sort of an initial book that covers policies pertaining to all parks, and in the second book there's a chapter for each park. However, probably the key difference to the 2010 plan is the 2010 plan, written under the Auckland Regional Council, was like a Swiss Army knife. It had everything in it, and it was an amazing document for Auckland Council to receive and to move forward with. But this plan, a decade on, has a decade of Auckland Council policy, plan and bylaw making in so many areas that relate to regional parks. So we don't need to present a Swiss Army knife now. We can rely on a whole bunch of other tools that are sitting out there, and we reference those tools and we use those tools in this plan. So just moving to the next slide, please, Maya. Probably don't need to say too much about this. Obviously there's a vision, values, a management framework, which is particularly important for the Local Government Act land that we hold under that Act. And then there are a range of general policies covering the areas that you can see on that slide. Next slide, Maya. Book 2, the structure of each park chapter starts with a vision for that park. We acknowledge the mana whenua associations which have been referenced in treaty settlements. We describe the park. And that includes a lot of its history, ecology, heritage, a lot of the values that we want to retain. We describe the current recreational provision in the park, and then we outline the key pressures, challenges and opportunities that we've identified through the comments that we've received in, through a number of things. So, and that leads to the key bit for each park chapter, which is the management intentions, which we number. And they are intentions subject to resourcing, but they cover the natural values, the cultural values, and the recreation and use. So next slide, please, Maya. I'd just like to explain some exclusions, which we did cover in the last workshop. Mutukaroa, Hamlin's Hill, we recommend to exclude as the iwi Management Trust, which has been set up, if one of its key roles is to input into plans like this, is unfortunately not operative at this point in time. And also there are active treaty settlement processes that are actively underway and not resolved. So to create a forward plan at this point in time is just a little too difficult for that regional park, which will continue to be managed as a regional park. The Whenua Falls Special Management Zone, we recommend to exclude that as a key part of that zone is owned by Ngāi Taiki Tamaki through their treaty settlement, and council must jointly prepare that section. And it's the key bit of the falls that you look at when you see the falls. So it's we're recommending that we exclude a slightly broader area around that so that we can work with iwi to jointly prepare that section as an integrated whole. And that will take some time. Additions can be made to this plan through variations at appropriate times. So as those pieces, as it is, those things are ready to be consulted on and then finalised and brought into this plan, that can occur in the right time. Just moving into, we're expecting intense interest, particularly from our key stakeholders around this plan. And we're really looking forward to engaging with them over the next 12 weeks. Particularly given that it's coming into the Christmas period, we've proposing 12 weeks right through to the 4th of March to give people plenty of time. We'll do the usual release through our Auckland and social media, and all the documents be available through AKHSA. We also will email all of the mana whenua contacts that we have made throughout this process and engage again with the Mana Whenua Forum and make sure that they are all very aware that they can input through this more formalised process, but as we come through into the written submissions and into the oral hearings a little bit later. We will email all our submitters, which included many of our key stakeholders last time round, and we'll do some reminders as we go through, and we'll offer the opportunity for briefings, particularly to those key stakeholders, and Q&As, and so we'll look at online and traditional means of making sure people understand about the plan. The hearings are due to occur in May after we've had local board input again in April. So closed March, summarise, local boards, and then the hearings. I think that's pretty much everything that I've got. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, and looking forward to your partai.
Well, thank you, Jo. Before I open it up, one thing I want to do before I ask Councillor Walker, but really invite a response to his questions at the last item, and that is, yesterday Councillor Henderson mentioned the regional parks and the ability for Auckland Transport around buses to take our community to the regional parks. And as a result of your comment, Councillor Henderson, what I've done is spoken to the team and also spoken with Maya. So there is a request that we've put in for a workshop early next year, because we need to bring on Auckland Transport, as you know, and everybody knows. So there has to be some work done around that. So Councillor Henderson and also Councillor Fletcher, with the comments you put in yesterday, I just want to assure you that the work is noted and the comments are noted, and we have put a request in, as I said, for a workshop to be done early next year. So just wanted to let both of you know what's happening. So Jo, can we go to our answer to Councillor Walker's question that is now put here? Do you want me to get Councillor Walker to ask his partai again?
Thank you, Chair. I understood it was about the extent of revegetation, but if Councillor Walker could restate it a little bit more precisely, that would be really helpful.
So, Councillor Walker, if you go first, and then I've got Councillor Watson next. Thank you.
Sure. Good as gold. I mean, the context is we've got a climate emergency. There's an urgent need to reduce emissions. Methane is one of the worst by far products in terms of emissions, and is internationally recognised as one of the things that you can mitigate because the impact on reducing the carbon effect is actually quickest if you can reduce methane, because it's so volatile. The flip side is the requirement for us to reduce emissions by sequestering carbon, and the regional parks are by far and away, I'd suggest, the best location that Auckland Council has access to plant trees. So my question in the information that we're going to be supplying people as an option is, are we providing sufficient information for them to make a choice? Because as it stands now, I understand that we're farming with livestock, but equally there are other forms of livestock that don't generate the same emissions. They may not be so relevant, and there's ample opportunity to plant trees. That could also include exotics as well as natives. For example, we could have exotics as a forest crop. They may not be native, but sheep and beef and the animals that we have aren't native either. So we've already made a commitment in principle to have lots of things on regional parks that aren't natives. So that's the context and the question. Does that give you enough to go on, Joe?
Through the chair, thank you very much, Councillor Walker. Yes. So in terms of the information that we provide to help people respond, I'm just working with the what are they called, the engagement specialists right now on how to present the questions appropriately. And it's a very good question, because one thing that we do need to do is to be very neutral in the way that we ask our questions, so that we don't get slapped on the wrist by the hearings commissioners when we get to that stage, and so that people can, answer appropriately. But yes, we are trying to work out what's the appropriate amount of information to give. So that's a really good comment to take into consideration when we try to work out the right amount of information to give on this question. That said, we're not presenting options to the public. We're presenting our draft plan. So the plan has a pathway, and we'll present that, and we'll ask people's support for that, and just ask them whether they want more or less, that kind of thing. So I'm still working out those questions to put in the information at the moment. Scott, is there anything else you might like to add, or others in relation to that?
Yeah, look,
May I just raise a related issue, and this is a consistent question I ask, and that is around the necessity of scenario planning, particularly as it goes to issues around climate change, because the situation there is deteriorating rapidly, and I'm just mindful that we may go out with a draft, but in my opinion, in this issue in particular, people need choices.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson. I'll come back to Councillor Watson if he gets back online. Now I know that two of our quorum will have to leave because of the freedom camping, but is there anybody else with any part? I'll wait for Councillor Watson to come back on board. I'll just wait for the 3-second rule for anybody else. Okay, 3-second rule gone. I'll just try once more with Councillor Watson before I open it up for any whakaaro. Are there any whakaaro comments that anybody wants to make before I close this particular item and then close our hui?
Oh, kia ora, Chair. My chat doesn't seem to be working.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, kapai, Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, Chair, and it was just brief. I know we've had a massive day, but this is a huge body of work, and I think that the principles and the values and what this document represents is pretty phenomenal, really, and so the staff have done a fantastic job, and I think that it speaks so much about what our regional parks mean to us, mean to Tamaki Makaurau, mean to mana whenua long before any of us were here, and also how it ties in everything else we're doing, whether that's the planting of the trees, the climate change, the Kōrero dieback programs, the biodiversity work. Within each regional park there is so much that's being done, whether it's the kokako chicks which are hatching, and the pest-free work, the volunteers, wherever you go around the city, there's just phenomenal work being done. The rangers and the team and the people passionate about it. I think, as we've seen through lockdown as well, that people, as soon as they had the chance to get out of their homes, they went to our regional parks. If they could and those who haven't are starting to learn about our regional parks because they might not be able to go travel other places. So I just think that the more people we can get into our regional parks and seeing what it is, but also the protection and what this plan does, kind of like a reset, I guess, for the future of our parks. So I just want to thank the staff so much for the energy and effort that's gone into this, and I'll be excited to see the process from here as well. So just a real big thanks.
Kia ora, Councillor Hills, and yeah, you're so right around that. I'm just going to ask if Councillor Watson is online yet. I've tried ringing him. If not, I'll go to Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, kia ora matua. Just echoing Councillor Hills' comments first and foremost. I think we kind of underrate just the amount of work that's gone into this, because staff have just done so much work, and just how important it is to the future of our city, and how much enjoyment that our residents get out of our regional parks. And so I just think it's absolutely fantastic and just really great work. And part of that is safeguarding our walking trails and our forests that are most important for future generations. I also just wanted to quickly add thanks as well, Matua, for looking into a workshop for the buses issue. I think that, you know, standing tall as a climate emergency council, we can say to people that you can sustainably access some of the precious jewels of our city that are nationally and internationally important. I think that's work we should be doing, and I'm aware of some of the challenges around that work, so that's why we get a workshop together and we see if we can overcome those challenges. So thanks, staff, thanks, Chair, and thanks, everyone.
Ka pai, Councillor Henderson, and yeah, again, thank you for your words, along with Councillor Hills, and also the comments in the sidebar from his Deputy Mayor, Bill Cashmore. So, Councillor Watson, your pātai, and also the opportunity to comment before I go to Councillor Fletcher. Kia ora.
Thanks, Alf. It froze there, so I couldn't get back on. So what I was thought I was saying was a question for Joe, and it went to a very specific part of what we're going out with in the draft management plan and Book 1, Section 7.45, which goes with this notion of investigate formally, including regional parks that contributed to the coastal area of the Gulf into the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. And I was just seeking an explanation of what formally meant in that respect. What does that mean?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. What it means, we got some legal advice on what does that mean, and the advice that we got back, essentially, we are already cooperating and we're working with, and our values and our objectives are in line with what the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park Forum and the legislation actually requires us to do. So there's not anything additional that we really need to do. The key thing that we do need to do, make sure that we do, is make sure we think about referencing that piece of legislation and check that we are covering off what's in that legislation, which is, as I said, aligned to what we're already working to. So that's why in that, if you see in that section, we said first and foremost, just collaborate with the forum anyway and make sure we work with them, and then consider joining. So that was just the two sides of that.
Okay, so a follow up. So consider joining the forum. Is that what you're saying now?
Sorry, I haven't got the exact words in front of me, but we can formally designate regional parks to be part of not the forum, sorry, the park, the marine park.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that then is, and this has only just occurred this week, there is proposals from within the Hauraki Gulf Forum to change the nature of the forum, to change it into an authority and to change the composition and the governance of that forum, and therefore change the Act. So if the Hierarchy Golf Forum is successful in that proposal, that changes the nature of the forum. Does it change the nature and conceivably then change the nature of the relationship of the regional park? So what would your proposal at 45 mean in that respect then? If we are formally included within the Hierarchy Golf Marine Park under the Act, and that forum changes its nature and its composition and its governance arrangements, what does that mean for Auckland's regional parks that are included?
Under the legislation as it is currently, and that was what we made our recommendation under the current legislation, nothing in that Act affects the management of lands. And there's some private land within the Hauraki Golf as well, Hauraki Golf Marine Park as well. So if the legislation were to change, then we would have to look at what that means for what we say there. But at the moment, under the current legislation, it wouldn't mean any change to the management or governance of the regional parks.
Okay, so final question along this line, Mr. Chair, thank you. So if it does change, and this is not a hypothetical, so this is very much on the table to change the Act and to change a number of the key clauses of that Act, what I'm interested in seeking assurance on is that if we go in what is being proposed here at point 45, which is formally including the regional parks within that entity, formally, how does that affect those parks? If we go in and then this legislation's changed or changes after the fact, how does that affect Auckland Council's regional parks, given that the actual assumptions that I assume have guided this statement will have changed? That's not clear to me.
No, well, not knowing what the changes would be, we would have to investigate that at the time that it occurs.
So were you aware of these proposals that the Hierarchy Golf Forum had at its meeting on Monday?
I became aware just this last week, yes.
Okay, so you've just found out about those two, Joe? Indeed,
yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chair, so I'm just signalling that as a concern, is that there is proposals within the Hierarchy Golf Forum that will affect point 44 and point 45 that we're going out in section 7 of book 1, and that's a concern to me.
Okay, then. Thank you, Councillor Watson, and it has been taken on board. So, Joe, that may be something with the team later on next year to come back. Obviously, as you said, let's wait to see what gets decided, and then we can come back always through this. We'll also wait to see what happens during the consultation period for our management plan. So, Councillor Watson, I'm going to invite you, before I go to Chris Fletcher, Councillor Chris Fletcher and Councillor Kathy Casey, to if you have any whakaaro.
I guess the only comment I would make, Mr. Chair, and it's a brief one, is that on the basis of these developments or proposals, however you like to frame it, this week, which could well be enacted, I'll be expressing in my vote my opposition to what exists in the draft regional parks management plan as it goes to the point I was making. Most of the other content is of a very high standard and very informative. That's quite easy to read and is quite educational aside from everything else. But that key point that I referred to, that is a grey area. I realise this is at the consultation point. but I guess it's becoming of me as an elected member to articulate that concern, because I am aware of it. A number of other councillors won't be aware of it because they're not on the Hierarchy Golf Forum. So I will just be registering that when it comes to the vote, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ka pai. Thank you. Councillor Chris Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In speaking to this, I really do want to acknowledge, in a very personal way, the staff that have worked on this, from Joe to Matt to Scott Silver, Mace. You've gone way and above your duties as officers to this council. You can see in the body of work the heart that you've actually put into this work, and it's really not to be underestimated what an enormous body of work that there is. So if you're looking at the first book, if you like, to try and anticipate the way that our parks might be used looking out into the next decade or so, whether it's fire management, whether it's concessions and leases and restoration of ecosystems, or I could go on and on. No one knows some of the challenges that are going to be there, and yet in a way, without being too prescriptive, you have written it carefully that it can be sufficiently permissive that it can unfold into what the requirements are going into the future. So I do really want to recognise the stewardship and the visionary way in which you've tried to pull it together. Undoubtedly, there are going to be matters of controversy, and having been involved in submissions on other matters over the years, I think because of the affection that Aucklanders have with their regional parks, I can anticipate that there's going to be major interest in the consultation, and I think it's wise that you are allowing the 12 weeks, especially across the Christmas period. There'll be issues around what co-governance will mean. Issues have already been raised today about managing farming in the area, and there will be just as many people that are passionate about perhaps the farming heritage to a lot of these parks, as there will be those that say, no, we can be doing more by way of mitigation and climate change. So I'm really looking forward to the debate that will be generated, but you've given us a fantastic framework in which to have this debate. So, Mr. Chair, I don't intend to try and begin to touch on all of the subject headings, but it will be about partnerships, whether it's with the volunteer sector, whether it's with mana whenua, whether it is with the Department of Conservation. Our regional parks are going to be about partnerships going into the future. It's an area that I think is going to be fascinating for us all, and I just want to thank you all for the privilege of being able to work with the staff who I think have done a really good job of bringing this document today, and it would be good to see it adopted. It's not perfect yet, but I think it's an awfully good start, and look forward to the consultation that will ensue. So thank you to all the officers that have worked on it.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Fletcher. And look, I'll move to, yes, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's nice to follow Chris, and I do support everything that she said, so I don't need to say as much as I would have. But like Chris, I think the staff deserve a huge round of applause. Claudia, Mace, Joe, and the fantastic PACE team, including Scott and Matt. This is a really good document to go out for public consultation. I want to say that I support the draft fully. And I also think that the hearing panel, the choice of Councillors Fletcher and Cooper, is a really wise and fulsome choice. I think you're going to have a great consultation, and there will be controversy. There always is, but I think they'll be really exciting. So, all power to your elbow. the last thank you I want, apart from Maya, always the Queen, apart from Maya, who runs the show, I really want to say thank you to Alf. The work that Alf does behind the scenes is in the resolutions that you are about to pass unanimously today, and it's in the draft report. So Alfie, I'm really proud to be your deputy dog. I love it. It's a lot of hard work, and you do crack a big whip. But I do think that this is the best. The PACE team is the best team in council, and I think the PACE committee is the best council committee.
Hold on.
Thank you very much for your support for these resolutions, and really great work, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Casey, and I share the same sentiments in regards to both you and I. Look, all the staff and the speakers that have spoken, and those that have put the comments in the sidebar, like that of the Deputy Mayor, thanking, and a huge thank you, like that, Councillor Simpson, say a huge thank you. I am not going to repeat all the thanks that people who have spoken before me. I do, however, just want to acknowledge the core team, but just acknowledge the fact that I know that both Kathy and I put the pressure on our team to get this done. Why? Because we wanted to adopt this piece of work after the hearings and after the consultation. We wanted to adopt it in this term, our term. We didn't want it to go into the next term where it could have been shred to pieces and everything else. So firstly, my humble apologies to you, Joe, and the rest of the team for putting that pressure on. But it was so important that, as Councillor Fletcher said, with all the work that you and the team have done, it was important that we acknowledge that by approving by the end of this next year, approving this. And that is the best kudos that we can do as elected members and the Independent Māori Statutory Board, is to pass this before the end of 2022. So thank you so much in regards to this. It has been moved and seconded, and I will put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
I'm just asking my opposition, Mr. Chair, to Book 1, Section 7.45, if that could be recorded, please.
Yeah, kapai, and I know that Maya had it ready to put on there when you mentioned it. So thank you so much, Councillor Watson.
Same for Walker.
Sorry, I just heard something.
Same for Walker.
Okay. Yeah, that's been noted. So look, thank you so much, everybody, in regards to it. It's been done, it's passed, it goes out for consultation. Now, I just want to say a couple of things before we close. This is the last meeting for us, and on behalf of Kathy and I just want to say to everybody, Independent Māori Statutory Board, to everybody here, all the best for Christmas with your whānau, with your inga. You know, I hope that you do have the break that we all deserve. So, you know, on behalf of Kathy and I and our core team, Samantha, Andrew, our CSAs, look, that's our core team that we have to support our parks team, but to support the team that report to the PACE committee. I just want to say thank you so much to all the elected members, to His Worship the Mayor, again and our little Pepe that's there now with Matua Richard. Look, you know, that is just so cool. So I want to say thank you so much and all the best to you all, because I think that what we've done collectively, not only with this particular committee, but with all our committees. And look, everybody's going to have their little babies. So if you've got any little babies go and grab them and put them on the photo, so we can all see. So look, thank you so much to everybody, and to Pippa, to you and to Richard, Chair and Deputy Chair of the Environmental and Climate Change Committee. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your day. And thank you for allowing us to have these two items that are so important to us. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your day. Thank you so much. Look, I don't know if Matua Glenn is here. I know I see his face, but what I've done, I know he had to go. I've asked Claudia I've asked her to close our meeting with a karakia whakamutunga. So Claudia, I invite you to close our hui with a karakia. And just before you do, I wanted to let everybody know that myself, Samantha, and also Andrew, Simon Pickering, we're looking at organising, hopefully, a Christmas get-together with the vaccination pass before we close council, and 1 metre distancing under our traffic light system. So I just wanted to let you know, and we will be sending out emails to all of you to say thank you. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa, whawtaitele lava, and I'm just going to invite Claudia to close with our karakia. Thank you so much.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe, Elf. Thank you so much for everything this year, and thank you to all of the councillors for all of your wonderful pātai and discussions throughout the year. Every time I attend one of these meetings, I learn something, and I am always impressed by the enormity of breadth of knowledge that you have about our communities and the advice that you give to us. I'd like to, if I may, just quickly use the opportunity to say thank you to the team. This was an incredible milestone, and you have achieved this milestone despite COVID and despite lockdowns and despite reopening plans, and I know it's been tough. So thank you to everyone for all of your hard mahi, and thank you to all of our elected members for your support. We could not do this without you. It has been a real challenge of a year, and we're probably all quite keen to have a wonderful celebration with you as soon as we can, socially distanced of course, and also to have a break over Christmas. So thank you for the opportunity to close with a karakia as you head out safely on your evening tonight. E nui tātou. Unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia mai ki te urutapanui. Kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, me te wairua e te aratakatu. Koia rā e rongo. Whakairia ka I runga. Kia tina, tina. Haumie, huie, tai.
Tai
Kia
Kia ora, peeps.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Ka kite Richard e re rawa ko pepi. Ka kite, my mate.
Thanks, Elf. Well done.
Sweet.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.